an absolute domination is what it's going to be. I'm looking really forward to getting my hands on him and getting a feel for his nuts.
This is Johnny with Tiger Bomb MMA, and tonight I'm going over UFC 289, Nunes versus Aldana, taking place in Vancouver, Canada. Is it British Columbia, I believe? Let me make sure. Been there before. I loved it. Yep, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Really enjoyed their strip clubs. I'm not a strip club kind of guy, but something about, Canadian strip clubs, they really work for your money. The overall card, pretty solid. Some interesting underdogs that I looked at. Interested overall in this entire card. Like, we get a pretty decent main event that includes two women. Like, I'm actually interested to see if Aldana can be the second female Mexican UFC champion, or if Nunes just kind of continues her reign. It's a different fighter that she's fought in a while. It's a bit of a threat, but also not really much of a threat. I'll get into that later today. But yeah, I wanted to break down the card that happened yesterday, the Kai Kara France versus Amir Albazi. So I'm going to cut into that real quick. Yeah, let's start with the first fight of the night. Overall, I did pretty pedestrian. I didn't do all that great on this card. All my track bets lost, but all of the bets that I made afterwards ended up kind of putting me back into like breaking even status. I may be like maybe no, actually I did break even perfectly. But first fight of the night, Felipe Lins versus Maxine Grisham. I had Lins, did exactly what I kind of hoped he would, just kind of do enough. I was surprised that Grisham really didn't have much for him. He really did look like almost 40 years old. Leans, I don't know what he's on, but it's working for him. Damon Blackshear TKOs Luan Lacerda. I was a little surprised at how bad Lacerda looked in this spot. I knew how good Damon was. I was hoping he would win, even though I picked against him. Like, it just, the track record of him looking kind of bad. Like, his takedowns look good, his defense looked good on the ground, and then he actually TKO'd Luan Lacerda, which I didn't see that coming. I thought he would potentially win just by decision. So props to him. Lacerda, I had a parlay with him that died, so that's another bet. That's first bet that died. Another bet that died, Jin Yu Frey lost to Elise Reed. Some people might say that Jin Yu Frey would have won that fight just based off of the takedowns and the control time. I'm not one of those people. I lost that one fair and square. It would have been nice to get that, not necessarily a robbery, but the nod. It was what it was, but I'll do it again. Different circumstances. Jin Yu Frey wins and cashes me out as a dog. Next up, Muhammad Naimov defeats Jamie Malarkey. I thought that was a bit of an early stoppage, but not necessarily a egregious stoppage. Naimov didn't look all that great to me, but he ended up doing what he had to do and knocked out Jamie Malarkey, so good on him. John Castaneda defeats Muam Gafarov. I was happy with this. I picked John Castaneda. I didn't touch him. I don't know. I felt as if he was getting super disrespected, and he went out there and performed. Like, he needs to have more output. When he does have more output, he can be a problem, right? He tends to land that head kick 2 in a row, hurts his opponents. Couldn't necessarily finish him, but I think he was on track to getting that finish had he had a bit more time. Grappling looked good. Takedown defense looked good. Gafarov, his gas tank looked impressive. Like, he went, as I called it, I said he went full Sean Penn in I Am Sam in that particular bout, but his cardio held up very well. I was impressed. Overall with him, he needs to clean up his striking, but I mean, a lesser opponent, he would have had that dude out of there. So I'm not going to shit on him too much. I'm interested to see both these guys progress, but props to John Castaneda for killing a lot of people's bets. Now to my bet that was killed. I had a couple units on Andrei Arlovsky, one straight, one parlay, and he let me down. Frankly, I shouldn't even say that. I let myself down. Like, I knew what I was getting into, so I'm not going to shit on this entire fight. Andre losing isn't surprising. Dontel Mays winning is a little surprising, just because there's always a possibility for a heavyweight to get a knockout, but for Dontel Mays to get a knockout, he really sucks. So it's on me to bet on a fighter that's that old against a guy that sucks. That's my fault. Daniel Santos literally beats the piss out of Johnny Munoz Jr. Not much to really say. Daniel Santos looked like an absolute complete fighter. Munoz, I'm not going to criticize him because I saw the pictures of his emergency room visit afterwards, where his liquid was like it looked bad, like his urine looked like pink. So I'm not going to criticize him for looking quite pussy-ish, I would say, on the ground. Like, do not pull guard and keep the dude in your body lock. Like, don't do that. You're going to lose. You can't pull guard and win a fight unless you immediately do something with it. We literally just went over that a few weeks ago during my judging courses. But yeah, Daniel Santos looked great. Elizeu Zalescu dos Santos defeats Nurmagomedov. Abubakar has me talking like, Abubakar over here. I had a little bit of money on Abubakar, just because I thought he could win this fight. Immediately hurts Zaleski, and then afterwards, it's like he ran out of his maximum cap of how many punches he can throw. And Zaleski did what he had to do. Like, it wasn't a robbery. Abubakar definitely lost that fight. It's just like, damn, this guy. That's what I get for betting on a guy that sucks. Zaleski, he didn't look great, but he looked good enough to win this fight. We'll see where he's at in the future, because him getting rocked by Abubakar, regardless of the fact that Abubakar's boxing is decent and Zaleski's always had a bit of an issue with like straight boxing, still though, that's kind of a bad sign. Karine Silva versus Caitlin Souza. I max bet Silva because I was like, I need to make some money back. So I max bet her chalk like -2 something to get a unit back. And yeah, it paid off incredibly quickly. I also took her by inside the distance, which was like +110. So slowly I'm recovering. And yeah, no business in there did Souza have with Karine Silva, man. Like, she's a killer legit, because like I said it from the beginning, Souza has a chance to win this one by a decision, but every threat will come from Silva no matter where you're at. Tim Elliott defeats Victor Altamirano. Tim Elliott looked okay. I actually put some money on him as well to win a unit, so I'm slowly recovering my money. Altamirano, give him props. He went out there and he tried. He landed some pretty good shots on Elliott. Had it been anyone else, he would have gotten the knockout, but Elliott looked good enough to win the fight. I'm a little disappointed he didn't really call anyone out afterwards, but what is he going to do? Call Kevin Kroom out and get him a job in the UFC, cuck himself some more? I don't think so. Jim Miller, I max bet Jim Miller. I bet him at chalk, like -250. And I'm like, dude, I literally said, Jim, please go out there and make it quick. He made it quicker than I needed to. And he again, slowly recovering. Then I lost a little bit of money on Caceres. A lot of people did by TKO or by inside the distance, but what are you going to do, right? Someone, I forgot who it was, said that he couldn't finish the corpse of Daniel Pineda. I think it was like Big Steve. And then I'm responding to him like, even George A. Romero thought that zombie Pineda was a little too overpowered, because like, dude got hit hard. I'll give Pineda some props though, because like he had a cool moment. Mark Smith is like aching to get in there to stop the fight, right? And then Pineda notices him and he's like, shoot, get away. Like, get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, all right, Pineda's cool. Yeah, Amir Albazi steals one against Kai Kara-France. That was pretty bad, right? Like, I don't call things robbery too often, but that was pretty damn bad. I had it 4-1 Kai Kara-France, at the very worst 3-2 for Kai Kara-France. I mean, Albazi looked he looked pretty bad. Like, he didn't really have any other plan B. Like, granted, Kai Kara-France didn't look all that great, but I thought he looked good enough to win at least 2 out of 3. I mean, I had some money on Kai Kara-France. That's not the reason why I'm butthurt. Like, I've lost money before, right? Like, it is what it is. It's just more of like, everyone's bitching about judging, and they're like, how do we fix judges? And it really has to come down to, there has to be some sort of repercussion, like legit. There has to be like, yo, you fucked up, or we need to go over this, or you need some training, because like, they shouldn't have gone down that way. Like, round number 4 was given to Albazi, where he was outstruck and taken down. Like, yeah, it wasn't the most impactful takedown, but that was like, dude, what the fudge are we doing? Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So, yeah, Kai Kara-France, he got screwed on that one. Overall, I broke even, as I mentioned. I lost like 3 units immediately. Then I recovered. I could have been up a unit had, the judges done their job properly. But yeah, Kai Kara-France got screwed. And we're on to the next card. So let's get started with the Main card, first fight of the night at strawweight. Diana Warrior Princess Belbita versus Maria Oliveira Spider Girl. It's a near pick, a minus 115 for Spider Girl comeback on Belbita minus 105. And this one to me is, it's a decent enough striking battle to start out the card. And I think I see a little bit of value on one of these ladies. When it comes to Belbita, Romanian kickboxing champion, she's got decent enough power. She's aggressive enough. She attacks the body well. She should definitely go for some takedowns here. Like Maria Oliveira is not the best off of her back. She has decent enough get ups. She's a long girl. She's going to be the shorter girl here by 1 inch, and she's going to have a 1 inch reach advantage. The issue with Oliveira is that if you do tend to like take her down once, you don't have to continuously take her down, but just the threat of the takedown will make her throw less volume. But she does throw decent enough volume. That's really it. She does tend to gas out. She kind of needs to recover her cardio to kind of burst strikes. She can definitely steal rounds, but in this particular fight, I do think that Belbita is going to win this one. I think not only is she more capable of getting a knockout, I think she's just better, and I think she's going to win this one by decision. I'm surprised she is the slight underdog. I already have a dumb parlay with her at minus 105, so I think Belbita can win this one by a decision. I just think she'll be the stronger girl. I think she's got a better diversity of attack. I think she lands cleaner. Like Oliveira, I like Oliveira in certain spots where she can steal rounds, but in this particular case, I think she's got an issue where she might get hit a little too hard, and that dumb volume that she throws, it doesn't really land all that clean. It's going to be an issue. So I'll go with Belbita. I think she's going to just hit harder, and she might get a knockout here, but I'm going to play it safe, go by decision. If we see a little bit of like plus money coming in on Belbita, I'll probably take her straight. Might as well lose some more money on a women's fight, right? So let's move on here. Next bout. Interesting. I actually find this one quite compelling. We've got David Dvorak here versus Steve Erceg, Astro Boy versus The Undertaker. Right off the bat, a name like Astro Boy, you got to fade him, right? He's plus 150. Comeback on Dvorak is minus 175. So instantly, Dvorak is fighting a lesser competition. It's a newcomer. Newcomer is 9-1. I did tape watch him, not all that extensively. I just needed to see what he does wrong, how he can lose. He is I believe, a jiu-jitsu black belt or a brown belt, one of the two, but he is primarily, let's see here. I listed black belt, so let's go with black belt. He's pretty solid on the ground. He gives me a little bit of Jimmy Flick vibes, just not as active off of his back like as Jimmy Flick. I think Jimmy's a little bit more, loosey-goosey as opposed to Steve Erceg. He's pretty good on top. Off of his back, I'm not too sure. I think that's how you can lose this fight. Striking and not all that great, but he does have some goofy power, and I keep using the word goofy because like I saw this guy knock a guy out by throwing a punch that didn't even seem all that hard. So I'm not sure how hard this guy really hits, but he seems to be not too bad. Like I have it here. He's not too shabby. It's just that to me, it just seems like he's just not at the level of a guy like David Dvorak. Like some people might consider David Dvorak like maybe cooked or done or whatever word you want to use to describe him, but he fought two top level guys and he came close to getting finished both times, but he ended up actually recovering and winning a round off of both those top level guys. The guy's tough. The guy's a good point fighter. Solid chin. I just don't know how much damage he's taken because he took quite a bit of damage in those two fights. I'm just not too comfortable taking a shot on Dvorak on this fight because I do think that Erceg here has a really decent chance to win. I mean, the scenario I'm thinking is Dvorak's going to look great the first 2 rounds, right? Low calf kicks, point fighting, skirting against the cage, just avoiding anything from Steve. Even if Steve, say for example, misses weight, I get a feeling he might miss weight. He's a tall dude. He's 5'9", very Skeletor looking dude. But let's just say he makes weight and he's getting demolished, right? Like just point fighting demolished where he just can't get anything off. He looks like he doesn't belong in there. And then he possibly leaps in and kind of cracks David Dvorak with not a clean left hand, but clean enough to kind of rock his cobwebs a little bit, and then he can dangle off of his neck. That's how dangerous Erceg can be with the submissions. That's the main reason I'm staying away from it. I'm going to go with Dvorak to win this one by a decision. I think it's going to be a pretty comfortable decision. There might be some crazy spots in here where Erceg could possibly look like he's going to get a finish. I just think that Dvorak is really tough, and he's kind of proved it in his last two fights. So I'll go with Dvorak by a decision. Depending on the line on the decision, I might possibly consider it, but again, I just kind of don't want any part of that one. It just seems like it's a trap. Like, it could be another Jamie Malarkey spot where, like, yeah, Jamie is the better fighter. Granted, he's not minus like 400 in this case for the Undertaker. It's just still like, I'll pass on this one. Next bout taking place at featherweight, we've got Blake El Animal Bilder versus Kyle the Monster Nelson. And minus 200 for Bilder. Comeback on Nelson is plus 165. So if you don't know much about Blake Bilder, like, he made his UFC debut, when was it? Like 3 months ago. He beat Shane Young by a decision. I think it was like 2-1. Blake Bilder was a dog at that time. Now he's a significant favorite here against Kyle Nelson, which technically, yeah, he should be, but betting-wise, taking him straight is not an option. I did parlay him on that dumb parlay where I have Belbita. I might use him as a parlay piece on like maybe one or two, but he's not going to necessarily be like a big parlay piece for me. As you know, I'm taking him to win. The reason for it, I think he's just better than Kyle Nelson everywhere except one particular aspect, and that is, damn, as I'm thinking about it, maybe he's just better than him in every single way. There's just one particular thing about Bilder that I don't like, is that he gets dropped a little too much for my liking. Like, I've seen this guy get rocked, but he comes back and he wins the fight. Like, I mean, he's getting his ass beat. Like, he is one of the best to worst fighters, or the worst best fighter I've ever seen. One of the two. I'm not sure yet, but I think I wrote it here. Yeah, dude sucks and is good at the same time. The dude has great cardio, great BJJ. Like, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Fantastic finishing ability. Either like on the feet, he can knock you out, or he can take you down and submit you. What else is he? Decent outside movement. Like, again, he uses the movement, stays on the outside. With that cardio, he can keep it up for 3 rounds. Golden Gloves boxing champion. And his boxing is pretty decent, man. He was lighting up at the very third round, or near the end of the third round. Shane Young, like, he can let his hands go. I think there's just too much of a risk that he can get dropped, and then that price tag drops. You know what I mean? Like, Blake Bilder comes out here, looks good in the first round, gets dropped the second round, and then becomes like plus 100 Blake Bilder, and then Kyle Nelson's like a slight favorite. That's when I think I want to take Blake Bilder if he gets dropped. So my plan is probably to take a parlay piece Blake Bilder on one parlay, and probably live bet it if he gets dropped, because he probably is going to come back and win. Like, his only chance really is to knock him out. It's just that Kyle, as of late, he hasn't looked good. He's been more willing to grapple. Isn't he a team alpha male? Anyways, yeah, he's wanting to grapple more, and he's just not particularly athletic. And I just think that Blake Bilder's going to style on him. And yes, I do think that the minus 200 is an adequate price tag. I just don't think it's an adequate one to bet. But I will take Blake Bilder. I think he actually has a good chance to knock out Kyle Nelson in the third round. So I might even look at some props as well, depending on how well I do in baseball tomorrow, because I've been kind of losing money on baseball. But if Blake Bilder is, for example, round 2 or 3, I might take that, because I think Kyle Nelson is going to slow down. If Blake Bilder attacks the body very well, like, Kyle will slow down, and there will be that possibility for that finish. The issue with Blake, though, is because his hands are pretty decent. I think he can get both a knockout or a submission. So it's like, you don't want to pick wrong. So just go inside the distance, or just pick the round. So I'm going to go with Bilder by TKO third round. I think there is a good letdown spot here. Just be very prepared to be let down by Blake Bilder if you do as I'm doing and parlaying him with some other people. So let's move on. Ayman Zahabi versus Aoriqileng, the Mongolian murderer. So I have it here, MM Aoriqileng, Mongolian murderer. So in this particular bout, we've got the 35-year-old Quebecer here in Zahabi versus Aoriqileng. And right off the bat, I think there's some value here in Zahabi's plus 105 comeback on. Aoriqileng is minus 130. And I'll be very blunt. Zahabi is not impressive. He's just meat and potatoes, but meat and potatoes will fill you up. Meat and potatoes will win decisions. I'm not certain really at this point who to pick. I think Aoriqileng has a higher finishing output, just not even that high, in the sense of like it's just higher than Zahabi by like a few points. I think Aoriqileng, his best round is round number 1. If you can get Zahabi out in the first round, it should be right. He's a younger guy. He hits hard. I just think that if Aoriqileng cannot get that first round knockout, he's going to struggle later in those rounds. He lost rounds to what was it? Jay Perrin. And I'm not one of these people that shits on Jay Perrin. I think Jay Perrin's a very solid fighter. He only got, I don't want to say finished, but he got hurt by Jay Perrin. And I think his boxing is a little overrated. I think his power is good. His feint games are good. His kicks are good. I just think that he's kind of overrated in the sense where, I'll just say this now that I remembered, he lost to Jeff Molina. You really want to put money on this guy? I think Zahabi has a good chance to win this one by decision. He's got the jiu-jitsu black belt. I believe he's a black belt. Let me check here. There's one guy on here where I wrote down, yeah, it was him, brown or black belt, because I know for a fact he's at least a brown belt, but I'm assuming over the years he's been promoted to black belt. He's decent enough. He has some power in his punches. He can definitely knock out Aoriqileng or finish him. I just think if it goes to a decision, there's a good likelihood he'll get the hometown decision, whether he deserves it or not. I just think that there's a really good chance to take Zahabi here at plus money to beat Aoriqileng. I'm going back and watching tape on the guy, and I've just not been impressed by him. Like, there's just so many spots where he can get taken advantage of. Jay Perrin took him down. I think Zahabi is going to take him down and kind of molest him a little bit. Yeah, so I'll go with Zahabi reluctantly. I'm not happy about it, but I'll go with Zahabi by a decision. Next bout, we've got flyweights, Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Miranda Fear the Maverick. If you notice here, I have a little eye bar to kind of protect the identity of Miranda Maverick. The reason for that is that I think that she's pretty attractive. Something about the eyes, so close those out, I think would be good. Jasmine Jasudavicius, she is plus 240. Comeback on Miranda Maverick is minus 300. Letdown spot right here. I think this is the letdown spot of the card. I think Jasmine Jasudavicius has a very good chance to beat Miranda Maverick here at dog odds at plus 240. I think on paper, Miranda Maverick is better striking wise. I think her grappling is good, probably better than Jasmine Jasudavicius when it comes to like jiu-jitsu, taking the back, positional. It's just that she's too small. She's too small for this division. She's 5'3" compared to the 5'7" of Jasudavicius. So with Miranda Maverick, she is at her best when she's mixing in takedowns. At distance, I think she's going to have trouble with Jasmine Jasudavicius, who, believe it or not, has a striking background. She is a kickboxer. Ain't that something, right? Because we've seen her as like this kind of weight bully, big girl who likes to take girls down. I don't know how effective Miranda Maverick is going to be at distance. I think that if Jasmine plays the striking battle, I think she can actually start not piecing up Jasmine, but catching her coming in. The thing is, Jasmine's kind of slow, but I like her game, man. She can get on top. She uses her strength, her body lock takedowns. She's kind of relentless, right? Like I picked her to beat Gabriela Fernandez last bout, and she did exactly what I thought she was going to do. She's not impressive by any means. It's just that she can do just enough to win these decisions by being the bigger girl. Like, realistically, Miranda should win this one, but the fact that she's going to have a 2.5-inch reach disadvantage and a 4-inch height disadvantage, it poses an issue for me. Like, the last time Miranda Maverick had that kind of a height disadvantage was against Sabina Mazo, and she looked good, but she used her grappling. She had to take her down. And that's what she's been doing recently to get wins. Shanna Young took her down as well on the feet. It wasn't looking so pretty, right? Like, it wasn't terrible, but it was like, there's some issues here. I just think that Jasmine has a good shot here. And so I'm going to take Jasmine as a long shot. I might put some money on her. I'm not guaranteeing it yet, but I think she has a good shot here. I'll take Jasmine Jasudavicius at plus 240. Fuck it. I will put a bet on her. I'm not sure if it's going to be a unit or half a unit, but I will. I just think that there's going to be I've seen Miranda lose fights where she's dominant and she loses, and now she's fighting a Canadian in Vancouver, Canada. I've seen some worse decisions already, so I'll go with Jasmine to win this one by decision. Next bout, we've got the prelim main event. We've got Nasruddin Imavov versus Chris Curtis. Curtis, surprisingly, is a slight underdog, minus 105. Comeback on Nasruddin is a minus 125. I did decent enough footage watch or tape watch on these two, and I was a little bit back and forth. And I have, I think, a pretty solid breakdown of this fight. Like right off the bat, it should be one of two things, right? I think Nasruddin is better on the outside. He can definitely win this fight, kind of using a kind of stick and move type of a game plan, similar to what Hermansson did to Chris Curtis. Just be on the outside, land some shots from the outside. Surprisingly, Curtis has a longer reach. I was going to say use his reach advantage because theoretically he should, in the senses since he kicks better, and Imavov will have a reach advantage here. So kind of use kicks, teeps, keep him on the outside. But if Chris Curtis comes in and Chris Curtis walks you down and cuts off the cage, he doesn't have to land on your chin because I think Imavov has a solid chin. The body, though, like Chris Curtis, to me, has some of the best body shots, body hooks, very good counter, crisp boxer, period. There's just a game plan on how to beat him, and I just think that Imavov has a good shot here. When it comes down to the overall like matchup, it is going to be a game of inches here, where if Imavov, say he goes full pussy, stays on the outside, sticks and moves, I think he wins this decision pretty easily. He's going to piss off Chris Curtis. I just don't think Imavov is that good of a, I don't want to say fighter, but I don't think he's that good of keeping up the game plan. I don't think his cardio is that good. I think he's a good fighter. I think he's his best when he's actually mixing up some takedowns himself. And he's not going to take down Chris Curtis. I think if Chris Curtis himself uses some takedowns, or at least feints, like come in close, shoot for a takedown, get Imavov down, get him thinking, there's a good chance he can win this fight. And some people might be thinking, yeah, this is the second time Chris Curtis has fought a guy that Sean Strickland fought and beat, and they didn't go so well for him the first time. It could happen again here. I really don't think that's the case here. I think with Hermansson having that kind of long reach, the way Hermansson kind of herky jerks around, isn't afraid to kind of play that style. I think that was a tough matchup that night for Chris. As of late, though, my issue with Chris is that he doesn't throw enough. Like he's got the willingness to strike when he has to, but my issue with him is that he tends to kind of want to counter strike too much, and I don't blame him because his counter striking is freaking good. Like the way he was catching Gastelum at the end of those punches, like Gastelum would move in, then he would counter him with the left hook, and it would land. A lesser man would have fallen to those. It just really comes down to if Chris Curtis is willing to stop being I don't want to say stop being a bitch, because he doesn't fight like a bitch, but if he just stops being an idiot and mix in some takedowns of his own, I think he's going to have a lot of success here. He will slow down Imavov. Eventually, I think he can finish him. I think he does have a good chance here to either finish him late in the third or just nearly TKO him. I mean, beat him up badly. Imavov, I think he's a tough guy. Chris, though, like I know Chris isn't impervious to getting knocked out, but I just think his striking is technically better than Imavov, and his defense is better than Imavov. Imavov's defense tends to just be like backing out, and I feel as if Imavov, if he tries to push too much of a pace enough to like try to outwork Chris Curtis, I think he's going to gas himself out, and I think Chris Curtis has a chance here to either win the decision or get a later finish. So I'm going to go with Chris Curtis. I will go TKO round number 3. I think if he starts laying in those body shots early and gasses out Imavov, I think he has a good chance to stop him. Like maybe not a clean knockout, maybe even what you would call an early stoppage, but enough of Chris Curtis's shots kind of landing on Imavov for the ref to be like, that's enough. So I'm going to go with Chris Curtis. I think I might actually play some money on him again, depending on how the Tampa Bay Rays do tomorrow. I might be putting these bets in tomorrow. But I like Chris Curtis in this spot. As an underdog, I think he can actually beat Imavov. I mean, Sean Strickland, come on now, that they're going to talk. Unless I guess Chris Curtis tries to bum rush him again and they're not talking anymore. But I'll go with Chris Curtis here, third round TKO. All right, we've got the main card opener at middleweight. Eric, your boy Anders versus Marc-Andre Barriault. And Anders is plus 115, Barriault minus 140. I spent a little bit too much time on this fight, and I think this could potentially be an underground sleeper hit between these two guys. Really depends on how Eric Anders looks, to be honest, because I know what Andre Barriault's going to do. He is going to try to push a pace and try to kind of overwhelm Anders with volume. And I think he has a good chance to do that if Anders doesn't lay the foundation in the first round. So Anders, he's been up and down, right? Like he's looked really bad. Like in his last few fights, Jung Young Park, I thought he won that fight, but he did the bare minimum to win that fight. So I can't bitch that he lost it. And the Muniz fight, like, what are you going to do, right? Muniz was taking arms and he took his arm. I'll give your boy some credit, legit, because he has been doing some jiu-jitsu outside of, the UFC, and he's a brown belt now. And I think he's taking the fight game seriously. He's fighting at a Fight Ready. And I like the way he looked his last fight against Kyle Dacus. So the thing about that fight, which I'm going to get into specifics about it, I liked how aggressive he looked. I liked how his striking looked. I didn't like his defense, so I felt like he ate too many shots from Kyle Dacus. Granted, Kyle's a long, lanky dude. Decent enough striking, decent enough boxing. I just didn't like how often he got hit. When he landed flush on Kyle, I'm not going to say that like Anders has some ridiculous godlike power. It's just that it was impressive, right? Very impressive. I think Anders does hit ridiculously hard, but nothing too out of this world. He got the finish. I liked his aggression, though. That's the main thing. I like the aggression. If it continues in this fight, he's got a really good chance here against Marc-Andre Barriault. The issue with Anders is that I'm not too sold on him not willing to go back to bad habits where he's just not as physically imposing or aggressive. Like the guy's ridiculously athletic. What do I got here? His takedown defense has improved significantly. Yeah, granted, Kyle Dacus he isn't the best takedown artist, but still, like he was in some pretty deep shots there, and Eric Anders just shucked him off. Like I like what I've been seeing from Anders in his last fight, like tremendously. I'm like, this is a really good path for this guy. Like if he starts going not too hard in the first round, but faster in the first round, letting the hands go, like mixing things up, I think he's going to have a lot of success moving on, especially with these not necessarily lower level guys, but mid-level guys like Marc-Andre Barriault. Marc-Andre isn't like a top level dude. I think this is a really good spot for Eric at plus money. If, for example, Marc-Andre Barriault can exploit Eric Anders' his inability to move forward in the first round, his lack of aggressiveness in that first round, I think Mark is going to lay the groundwork himself to slowly take over and win this decision. Like he's going to be throwing more. He's more active. Cardio's good. It's goodish. It's not great. Like we saw good cardio and great cardio. We saw what great cardio does to good cardio when he fought Fluffy Hernandez. Fluffy broke him completely. I like his output. He has a nasty pace. Like if you start slowing down on this guy, he's going to take over. Like the way he handled Julian Marquez, like throwing those elbows in close, he broke the man, right? And Marquez isn't the best cardio out there, but still, like the way he broke him was a little impressive. What I didn't like about that fight is that Marquez was landing a little too cleanly on him. I think he actually hurt him a few times. And that's why I'm thinking if Anders can come in kind of not necessarily guns blazing, you don't want him to come in guns blazing because he can get tired and then he's going to get paced by Marc-Andre. But if he can come in here, land some solid punches, he doesn't have to knock him out. I mean, if you hurt him in the first round, you don't have to knock him out. Just continue that same kind of pressure and pace in the second. But if Marc-Andre Barriault survives, or if Anders doesn't really put it on him, I think Andre is the rightful person that's going to win this fight by decision. I don't think he'll finish Eric Anders. Eric Anders is a little too damn tough for his own good. Let me see what I have here. Yeah, if this becomes like a tit for tat type of matchup where one guy hits, the other guy hits, it's going to be Marc-Andre Barriault's fight to win. I just think that if Anders lands clean in that first round, it's going to be his fight to lose from now on. So I do like Eric Anders in this spot. It's just that I can't trust the man, right? I think he can definitely get a finish in either the first or second round. If it goes to a third round, I think it's going to be Andre Barriault's round. I don't think he'll get a 10-8. So at the very least, I think Eric Anders coming in here intelligently, fighting with a pace and aggressiveness, I think he can win at least 2 out of the 3 rounds. But realistically, I do think he's live here to get a knockout. Like, Andre's been knocked out before. He does have a decent chin. It's just that, again, if Eric Anders lands clean on Andre Barriault, whose defense looks a little suspect, we could be seeing a really early night for Eric Anders, man. I'm looking forward to this fight. I think there's a lot of possibilities. I'm looking forward to see if I'm right about any one of them. Because, again, if Eric Anders moves forward, goes in aggressive, good chance to get a win, or at the very least a dominant performance. But if Andre Barriault survives and or Eric Anders kind of looks at him for 5 minutes, I think Andre Barriault's going to slowly take over and progressively, like, dominantly win a 30-27. So I'll go with Eric Anders first round TKO. All right, next bout we've got at featherweight, Dan 50K Ige versus Nate the Train Landwehr. And I think this one's pretty simple to me. I think Dan Ige is going to knock out Nate the Train. And the main reason is that Nate the Train, I love the guy. I think, who doesn't love Nate the Train? But he's plus 190 here. I hate the odds on Ige. It's a minus 230. I think Nate the Train is one of the most well-rounded guys in the UFC. It's just that he has too many negative traits about him, right? His toughness is unquestioned, right? But his chin is a little suspect. You can crack him just hard enough, and I think he'll go down. I think there's too many liabilities for him in the sense that if he gets hit hard enough and he flails a little too much, they could stop the fight early. So it's a TKO in Ige's side. He isn't going to gas. I think his cardio is actually very, very solid. His recovery is very, very good. That's why his chin's a little suspect, is what I mentioned. I don't think he's chinny. I think that he can get hit. It's going to drop. He'll pop right back up. But in that in-between time where he's getting back up, what's going to happen? That's where I think Ige can really take over, either finish him or just do enough to, like, get the stoppage, like hit him that hard to convince the referee to be like, yeah, it's enough. But talking about how good Landwehr is, the guy has wrestling, jiu-jitsu, the guy has great cardio, a good pace. He's tough as hell. He's got, as they say, that dog in him. His recovery is good. Like, if this is a blood and guts war, Nate Landwehr, more often than not, is going to win that fight. The issues with him, again, is that, like, he gets hit, he's going to go down. I think in his last fight, he was getting hit. I didn't like it so much, but he kind of caught on to what Austin Lingo was doing. Dan Ige, though, I think his boxing is just way better. He attacks the body very nicely. I think Dan Ige right now is in the best form of his life. Looking at his Instagram, the guy looks absolutely ready to kill. And he deserves the recognition. He deserves to be minus 230. And I just think that realistically, the skill set is pretty even, right? I think Nate has more of that willingness to go out there and, like, kind of die on his shield opposed to Dan Ige. But Dan Ige has a ridiculous chin. The guy's not been knocked out. He's a tough Hawaiian here. And I just think that Dan Ige is he's going to be able to stuff any takedowns. I think he can get takedowns of his own. He's a powerful wrestler now. Like, the way he handled, God, what was his name? I can't remember him. Damon Jackson. He just kind of bulldozed him and took him down easily. Like, Damon Jackson's a very accomplished wrestler and grappler. I just think the combinations of Dan Ige, how patient he is, how he's going to cut off the cage, his defense is going to be good. The issue again is that the power is just going to be too much for Nate Landwehr. What I like about Nate Landwehr even more so is his kicking game. I think if there's a world where Nate Landwehr wins this fight, it's going to be a Nate Landwehr performance, but the reason for it will be his kicking game. I like the way he's been kind of implementing a teep up the middle, just kind of gauging distance. He just puts volume on guys. I just don't think it's going to be anything too overwhelming for Dan Ige. And I think Ige's eventually going to catch him, I'm going to say round number 2, if not even round number 1. I just think that, yeah, Nate Landwehr is always a guy that you want to put a little bit of money on because he's so much fun. He can definitely win this fight, but I just don't see where he can outmatch Dan Ige. I don't think he can outmatch him on the striking. I don't think he can take him down and dominate him on the mat. I don't think he can submit Dan Ige. So I'm going to go with Dan to knock out Nate Landwehr. At the very least, man, I would love it if this is a like back and forth 3-round fight war between these two. But I still think even then, Dan Ige is going to win it, but perhaps some fuckery is about. So that's why maybe taking a little bit of shot on Nate Landwehr might be worth it. But again, I just think Dan Ige is just completely better in this spot. So I'll go with Dan Ige second round knockout. Well, let's move on to the next fight. We've got Mike Malott taking on Adam Fugitt at welterweight. This fight is interesting to me because I think there's a good chance here that Fugitt can win. Fugue things up for old Mike Malott here, proper Mike, who is minus 210 comeback on Fugitt is a plus 170. So a lot of people discredit Adam Fugitt. I think he's a pretty solid fighter. I think he's, what did I write down here? Oh yeah, skinny Nate the Train. He kind of looks like Nate the Train, just kind of skinny and lanky. The guy is solid, man. The guy is absolutely unathletic, but he makes up for it with his grittiness, his decent enough striking, his grappling. I mean, he ruined a lot of people's nights, even my own, with like his TKO over Kinoshita. Like I even said to myself, like Johnny, I think I even in the video that I made, like I might put some money on Adam Fugitt. I was then kind of talked out of it, kind of brainwashed, if you will, to take Kinoshita instead of taking Adam Fugitt, even though I knew like Fugitt's he's not too bad. I think the perception of him being like a bad fighter is what is going to get a lot of people railroaded with him down the line because he's got decent enough hands. He's got the ridiculous length. He's 6'1" with a 77-inch reach. I mean, he's got the wrestling, he's got the jiu-jitsu, he's got the control. And I think his striking is underrated. The reason for it is that he actually has some pretty decent pop in his punches. And because he's so kind of goofy, you don't really expect him to hurt you. And I even wrote down like the guy, he even hurt the striker in the Japanese corner over here, Kinoshita, where you don't expect the guy that goofy to land on you and hurt you. And he's done it in the past, man. He knocked out, was it Solomon Renfro? When was that? That was his fight before coming into the UFC and the LFA. Solomon Renfro was about to come into the UFC. They're like, hey, take on Fugitt here. Take care of him and we'll get you in. Did not happen. I think TKO'd him with a head kick. He head kicked him and then finished him with strikes. Mike Malott, though, I think Mike Malott is absolutely a phenomenal fighter. The ability to kickbox and to have the jiu-jitsu in the back pocket, the wrestling, I think he's a very complete fighter. My issue with Mike, though, at minus 210 is that he's a little chinny. And yeah, he's just a little chinny. And I'm worried that if Adam Fugitt using his long reach, he's got a 4-inch reach advantage here over Mike Malott. If he does if he wins this fight, I think he's going to win by knockout. I don't think he's a better wrestler or grappler than Mike Malott. He's not a better striker than Mike Malott. I just think he just needs to land something sneaky and he can finish Mike Malott. Frankly, I really do think Mike is the better fighter. I'm going to pick Mike to win. I think he can actually get a knockout. I think his hands are cleaner. He hits harder. But damn, I've seen Mike a little wobbly and a little on Queer Street too many times. Like even in his fight with Lanus was not doing so hot. And Lanus kind of just leaps in with something stupid and he cracks him like right near the ear. And Mike Malott kind of stumbles a little bit and he clinches up with him, which kind of saved him there. I think if Adam Fugitt does something similar where like Mike Malott is on the outside, just kicking him, landing better, kind of leaping in, and if Fugitt kind of does something similar in the sense of like kind of leaps forward, non-technical, and lands either an elbow or a glancing shot, I worry that Mike is going to try to clinch, and then Fugitt at that point can possibly reverse him and get on top of a dazed Mike Malott. So I'm not touching Mike, period. I'm just going to see what happens here in the, what do they call this shit? The it's like the below the co-main, the highlighted, the featured bout. Yeah, I'm just going to see what happens here in the featured bout because I am not one to disrespect Adam Fugitt. I do think he's a very solid fighter. He's nearly a 2-1 underdog here. So again, it might be beneficial to take a shot on him just because like I like his game. I like his pressure. I like that he's so unathletic, but he makes up for it with like grittiness and wrestling and forward pressure. Like the pressure he puts on dudes sometimes will break them. I don't think that's going to happen here with Mike. I think Fugitt has to fight a smart fight, smart enough to try to land and strike with Mike Malott. Don't try to take him down when he's, has his wits to him. He's going to be the better grappler, the better striker. But when you kind of sneak up on him, I think that's where you're going to have some success. So if Fugitt is out here trying to strike with Mike Malott, using his reach, I think he's going to have some success. I do think, though, if Mike Malott is technically sound and he's fighting his fight the way he needs to fight it and possibly mixing up takedowns of his own, I do think he's going to get the second round TKO just because once he's inside the range of Fugitt, I think he can land some big bombs on him. Like Fugitt's been knocked out before. I just think that a technical striker like Mike Malott, who has the wrestling and the grappling ability, can finish Adam Fugitt relatively easily as long as he is mindful not to get too comfortable or not to disrespect the striking of Adam Fugitt. So realistically, I think the pick will be Mike Malott, but I'm gonna wait and see at that Fugitt line to see if it goes beyond like 200, like plus 200, plus 210. At that point, I might have to auto bet it just to see what happens because I do think he's got a path to victory here where it involves him using his hands. So I'll go with Mike Malott as a pick, but I'm not touching this one. I'm just going to enjoy it. Next bout, the co-main event. Not really much to say on this one, but I'll give you my reasonings for why I'm going with Beneil Dariush. I think Beneil Dariush is the better fighter between the two. I think he's fought the better competition to an extent. Like, yes, Charles has been champion. Yes, Charles has defended his belt a multitude of times. I just think that Beneil Dariush, did I just say he fought the better competition? I can make an argument for it, but now that I say it out loud, I think I sound a little fucking stupid. But I guess Tony Ferguson, I guess they both beat the shit out of Tony Ferguson. But I just think Beneil's better than Charles Oliveira. I think that Beneil Dariush would have beaten Justin Gaethje. He would have beaten Poirier. I think he would have beaten Michael Chandler as well. And call me crazy, but I think he would have given Islam Makhachev a much harder fight. And I think Beneil could have won that fight. Charles had no chance against Islam Makhachev. The odds are minus 130 for Beneil. Come back on Charles Oliveira is a plus 105. Like Charles' striking has gotten better. I think he's a more flashier fighter. He's more technical. He's flashier on the ground itself with like a multitude of submissions off of his back. He can get calf slicers. Beneil's not going to get no calf slicers. He can get inverted triangles. I don't think Beneil's going to do that. The issue here is that I think Charles Oliveira, he still has a little bit of that quit in him where, and I've said this for the longest time, if Charles Oliveira gets hit, which he will get hit, and I think he's going to get hurt pretty bad by Beneil with that overhand left that he lands, that nuclear weapon of his. I mean, Beneil's just too polished of a striker. I think he lands and hits harder. Charles throws more often, and I think he's gotten technically more polished himself. Like that left hook that he landed on Michael Chandler, to me, is one of the most picture perfect left hooks in shit that I've seen in a long time in MMA. Like it looks so weak, as some people said on the internet, but it doesn't need to be that hard for it to be perfect. But when it comes to Beneil, like his kickboxing's better, years of King's MMA and Black House and whatnot. I just think that the moment that he lands on Charles, he's not going to be afraid to get into his guard and finish him with strikes. So I'm going to go with Beneil Dariush to finish Charles Oliveira in the second round. Now, I'm not an idiot, and I do believe Charles has a chance to win. He can definitely win by knockout or submission. He's been submitted before Beneil, and he's been knocked out. Submitted by that goofy ass, what's his name? Michael Chiesa back in the day at lightweight when he was a lightweight. He got his back taken. Really couldn't do much because Chiesa was so huge, and then he got rear naked choked. If there's a chance Charles wins, it has to be by finish. I don't think he wins a decision. Beneil's going to win a decision, or he's going to win by finish. I just think that it's Beneil's time. Charles, as much as I enjoy watching him fight, and he was a serviceable champion, I just don't think he's got it in him to beat a guy like Beneil Dariush, who isn't afraid to get into his guard, play the jiu-jitsu game. As much as Charles Oliveira is a threat on the ground, I don't think he's a threat on the ground to guys who know what they're doing, like Beneil Dariush, who's that high level of a black belt in jiu-jitsu, who has a solid top game himself and doesn't always look to try to submit you from his back, right? Like he looks to sweep. And I think Beneil, if he gets on his back, will be able to sweep. Will be able to roll out of any sort of like guillotine attempts that Charles is going to throw at him. And I do look forward to seeing if there's going to be a ridiculous scramble back and forth. If it does get into a crazy mat scramble, Charles definitely has a chance to snatch up something or get a submission. Same thing with Beneil. Like they've both been submitted, but I think Charles is more apt to get submitted by guys who definitely should not be submitting him. Beneil, not so much. Beneil, if he gets caught with something, he gets caught with something. But I just think that at the very moment, it's his time. He definitely deserves a title shot. Once he beats Charles, he should wait out and fight whoever is the champ at that time. I don't know if Islam has a fight coming up, but they should definitely match him up with Islam if there's no fight. I can't really think if there's a matchup right now for the lightweight title. But yeah, it's Benny's time. Benny Dariush by second round TKO. Hopefully gives a great Jesus speech. You know what I mean? All right, main event time. We've got Amanda Nunes, the Lioness, versus Irene Aldana. And I find this fight pleasant for a main event headlined by a female champion. Well, I guess it's not many of them, but Amanda Nunes. I've given Amanda Nunes a lot of shit, and I think that this is finally a matchup that I can get excited about because there's a threat in the sense of Aldana. She's new to the title picture. Do I think she deserves a title shot? Why not? Who else is there? The threat comes with the boxing of Aldana, right? The boxing, and really that's it. There's a good chance Aldana can win this one, and it's one of two ways. Number one, with the boxing knocking out Amanda Nunes or catching her by surprise. And by that, I mean Irene Aldana realistically should get taken down at one point and then either beaten to crap or submitted. That's the realistic truth of this fight. Like you cannot be giving up takedowns to girls like Macy Chesson. Like she nearly lost that fight. Irene, that is. And as much as I've given Amanda Nunes a lot of crap and me saying she's not the GOAT, this is a clear spot where she has a lot of advantages. I mean, she's got every single advantage over Aldana minus the technical boxing. Like the jiu-jitsu, there's a little asterisk there. I think she's got better top game jiu-jitsu. I think Aldana, her jiu-jitsu is getting better. And I think that sneakiness of her like ability to get an armbar could play a factor here. That unpredictability, the unknown of Aldana. We don't know how much she's progressed from her last fight. I really don't think it's been all that much, but there could be little things there that maybe Nunes isn't fully prepared for. Realistically, though, she probably is. So for me, it's pretty simple. I do think that Nunes will get a finish. I would say either the third or the fourth round later in the fight. I think Nunes is going to. I think she's going to strike with Aldana. I don't think Aldana is that huge of a threat right off the bat, like immediately. I think Aldana definitely has the hand advantage, like the boxing, the hands. Kicking, not so much. It just really depends on how developed Aldana has gotten within the last few months, because like she was on her way to lose that Chasson fight. I'm not calling it a clean wipe here. It's like Amanda's minus 330, Aldana's plus 260. I don't think Aldana's at that point where it's like, oh, I got to take a shot on it. Like for example, if you would have taken a shot on the other, what's her fucking name? I can't think of her name. The other Mexican chick. Anyways, the one who beat Shevchenko. Why can't I remember her name? Like I know everything else about her other than her name. They're both from Team Lobo from back in, was it Jalisco? Yeah, that's where my parents are from. God damn it, what is her fucking name? Alexa Grasso. There you go. Yeah, like Alexa Grasso was like my minus 400 or plus 400 at one point. Like you got to take a shot at it at that time because her jiu-jitsu is a huge threat. Donna's jiu-jitsu, not so much. Man. Yeah, I don't think there's I don't want to take a shot on Aldana. As much as I want Aldana to win, and I do believe she's got a chance here to win, realistically, though, this is one of the more less. This is the easier fight for Nunes here, because like there's not a huge threat of the takedown. I mean, if Nunes gasses herself out, it's a completely different matchup. But if Aldana lands something early and doesn't finish her, again, a different matchup, because a compromised Nunes shooting for takedowns because she's desperate, not a good Nunes. A Nunes who is surprisingly really good in the southpaw stance, using kicks, setting up her takedowns. It's going to be a pretty easy night for her. I do think that the Nunes inside the distance line might be interesting. I haven't looked at it yet, but if it's plus money, I might take it. But I am hoping Aldana wins just to kind of mix things up. I do think she's got a chance to win. Very, very limited chance here, which is crazy because her odds are they're not as great as an underdog odds as Alexa Grasso's were with Shevchenko, which is kind of nuts. So, and I thought Grasso had a much better chance against Shevchenko than Aldana has against Nunes. So we'll see. We'll see completely what happens in this matchup. I find it interesting, really. I think it could be a fun fight. I think if Aldana wins, if she wins by decision, and she just kind of proves like, hey, I have leveled up, props to her, because they're both the same age, 35 for both. I just don't think that Aldana has that much in her tool belt to really pose too much of a threat to Nunes, unless we find out that Nunes has ridiculously shitty striking when it comes to the boxing, which is crazy. Like I bring up the boxing a lot because boxing and like kickboxing completely different, right? A good boxer can beat the crap out of a good kickboxer and vice versa, depending on the caliber. I just don't think that Irene Aldana's boxing is that huge of a threat. Like she didn't knock out Macy Chazon in the first round. Had she had done that, I'd be like, oh my God, we might have a new Mexican champ, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that was it was a decent enough performance, right? And I think she got lucky. Granted, thank God she got lucky because I had a parlay with her and I absolutely needed that money. But yeah, I just don't really see too much from Aldana. And I could eat those words because I mentioned again, like there's that possibility for the unpredictability of Aldana, where, man, she comes out here being able to stuff takedowns, keeps it on the feet, forces Nunes to box with her. And Nunes is like, I don't want any part of those hooks and body shots. We could be like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like, I am hoping for that. I am praying that happens, right? Because I want to see Nunes in some trouble where she doesn't look completely dominant, where she's just beating girls that are clearly a step below her. I don't think Aldana is many steps below her, like a lot of her competition, but she is still below her. So for that, I'm going to go with Nunes, third round TKO to finish Aldana, more than likely with the submission. I said TKO and more than likely. So I'm gonna go with submission. Fuck it. Nunes, third round submission. But yeah, those are my predictions for UFC 289. Yeah, I hope you liked the intro. I got a little lazy with it. I couldn't find anything funny, so I just went with the general fighter says something, and then he says something that he didn't say, but he said it. So Hope people enjoyed that. Luckily, there's no dog hunter interference this time. I know I've been kind of threatened by people that they would leave the channel or cancel me if a dog hunter made another appearance, but I can't control that. Okay, he just pops up whenever he wants to pop up. But yeah, Johnny from Tiger Bomb MMA. Like, share, whatever. Catch you at the next fight.